So whatever playbook you had before coming into 2023, you really have to sit down, throw it out, and start fresh.
What is product-led sales really? What does it make it so different?
One thing that is very true to product-led sales is identify what those moments are, what those flags are, and reach out to them with specific plays that apply to how you solve those challenges. You might have product market fit. Most PLG companies, they have a very strong market fit because their users are already using it, but you might not have sales market fit. One tactic that is a must for everybody who is listening is
meet Jorge Bestard, Head of Enterprise Sales EMEA at Canva. Canva is known for its successful PLG go-to-market motion, product-led growth, right? However, with many of the successful use cases in PLG, eventually, and especially if the goal is to grow enterprise accounts, a sales team is added to the motion. This is what is called product-led sales. It is obviously different than having a purely sales-led motion because product-led sales, or PLS, takes the best of both worlds, PLG and sales-led. Now, Jorge has done the move for Canva in the EMEA region, but his PLS experience really started at Miro, when he used to be responsible for the UKI go-to-market. And so in today's conversation, we'll talk about this motion much more in detail and also talk about what's very particular about it. So if you're running a PLG motion and are thinking to move into PLS, well, please enjoy from our conversation with Jorge. For the topic of today, I really want to talk about a new, I'm not going to say really new, but for a lot of people, I think it's still going to be new, go-to-market motion. Because we all know the more traditional sales-led motion where we have an SDR and an AE respectively generate and close pipeline. And then from a couple of years ago, we have on the other hand also the product-led growth, PLG, where the strategy relies more on using the product as a main vehicle to acquire, activate, and retain customers. But now there is also such a thing as product-led sales. And so maybe to introduce this topic, like what's your experience related to this?
Yeah, so my personal experience, I first experienced it at Miro, right? So Miro was a consumer product that people were able to buy, and then just had a lot of signups with company emails. At Canva, again, billions of designs created. We noticed that a lot of people were creating them for work. So I think you quickly realize that there's a trend, right? Is that you have a product that is wildly loved and used in the consumer lives, and all of a sudden that permeates into professional lives, right? I think probably, dating back, 20, 30 years when Microsoft launched their Office suite, and they first launched it in the consumer world, and realized that Excel, for example, was a widely used tool by accountants, right? And then if people are using Excel, why don't we get them to use the other productivity suites? And the same can be said about a lot of the products that we're seeing now, which is if folks are using them in their daily lives, that permeates into their professional lives. And then you have this user buyer within the company that's basically bringing the use and the purchase bottoms up. If we look back at the last 10 years of sales, the buyer has become a lot more sophisticated, right? Before, SDRs, account executives were calling into companies and saying, hey, do you know, there's this product that you have absolutely no idea about, let me tell you. And you were basically discovering the promised land for them. That doesn't happen anymore, right? Everybody already has some sort of solution. And now Jason Lemkin has a really good post about this, which is that SaaS solutions the market is quite saturated, and most of the new deals are becoming competitive displacements. So what does that mean for product-led growth sales? This means that the account executive becomes less of a I want to convince you seller, and it becomes of let me guide you through the product that you are using so you can get the most value out of it, so we can drive growth within your company as much as possible, right? And as you said, it becomes a product led sales, but it also becomes a sales assisted sales. So the sales become more of a almost like a Sherpa, which they're guiding the person up the mountain to, so they can understand the product.
Gotcha. Because, and I think that you also might agree with this, that every company to a certain extent already does product-led sales, especially I would say the companies that believe they do product-led growth.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's my misunderstanding of it, and you might disconfirm this, but if you start with the motion of product-led growth, and then from that situation to the other, you just add like a sales rep that actually go and look at the active users and how you can actually expand those users into paying customers or cross-sell, upsell.
Right.
Is that what it makes a motion being product-led sales? Or what is product-led sales really? What does it make it so different? What does it, for what reason does it get its own category name?
Yeah, product. I believe product sales has a couple elements. One is the buyer is already using the product, so the buyer already knows what the product is. So there is an element of the sale, which is if you're familiar with the concepts of above the line and below the line. The below the line are the user buyers, and above the line are the C-level executives who are not really going to use the product, but they buy into the vision of the company. So product-led sales starts below the line. So these are people who are using some elements of the product. They understand the product, and they might not understand why your product is different from the other 50 products that there are there, but they just happen to use that one product, and now they want it across their team. So the first element, it starts with a user buyer. The second element is expansion, right? The account executive starts thinking less about how am I going to convince this person that they need this product, and it becomes more of I have an approved product that I need to expand to other teams, and I need to let them know that their colleagues are using it and how they're using it. So the use cases become very, very tangible on real I think really relatable use cases within their own companies. And I think the third element, now thinking above the line, is that once you have this very strong install base, somebody at the C level who will never use the product, by the way, but they're gonna look down and they're gonna see that there's this kind of dark IT, or there's almost like this this massive use of the product, and they need to get a hold of it. And their main mission as a CIO or a CEO is to understand what technologies are going to get them from the stage that they are to the next stage. And that's where a more traditional sales cycle becomes apparent, right? So anybody that has done the sale in the last 15 years will be very accustomed to transferring the vision and convincing a CEO or a CIO to use or to buy a wall-to-wall solution. What's very different is that first layer, which is people that have access to 50 different products. They choose yours, they expand, and you basically sandwich the approach. You go bottom up with the user buyers and top down with the C-level executives.
That's interesting. I also think that what makes product-led sales very unique in its own way is that you don't only work with data that is publicly available. You have your own set of data because you can really look at usage and all of that stuff. And so what are like typical product signals that you strongly look at for the sales playbook?
Yeah, the playbook becomes a little bit different because the account executive, as mentioned earlier, is kind of guiding the buyer on this journey. Particularly when we're talking about below the line sales, and they're looking at the product usage and what triggers generally are aligned to good use of the product. I think the second element of this, which is important to note, is that because you're working with folks that have generally not purchased products before, so they have a very unique pain that your product is able to solve. Uh, I've been on the buying side and I've been on the selling side. Buying side is as equally hard as someone that's not a CEO as actually selling the product, because a user buyer will generally not buy 50 products throughout their career. So buy maybe one at a company that they were able to influence. So the role of the sales executive becomes as well, not only as a person who's going to guide the user to use the product throughout, uh, but also as a person who's going to help them deal with their legal team, deal with their procurement team, deal with their security team. So it's going to become that person that really handholds them throughout the process. Because you're selling the product every day and you're dealing with people buying the product. They're only dealing with one vendor, right? Um, so it's not, I always have to remind my colleagues, hey, this person, even though they have full intent of buying the product, it's very hard to buy it and you have to guide them through how to buy a product.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. Um, Now, if I got it right, I believe that you also kind of helped the organization at Canva, maybe also at Miro, to move away from really pure PLG to PLS. And so, can you maybe share about that experience? How did it go? What are the first steps that you implement, and how do you make that smooth transition to a successful product-led sales organization?
Yeah. Well, I think Miro was pretty much underway. I think Canva, they being a very strong consumer company, had some work to do and still doing a lot of the work. But I think the first thing that I always do is just go back to the basics, right? It's like, who is using our product? What's their motivation to use it? How can we build out use cases that they understand, and how can we extend those use cases across the board? So I think if you start there at the kind of at the base of the cake, and you solve for those challenges, then you're able to change messaging, you're able to change your outreach, you're able to change a lot of things. The second part is, uh, you might have product market fit, which I believe, most PLG companies, they have a very strong market fit because their users already using it. But you might not have sales market fit, right? And what I mean by that is your product easy to buy? Yeah. Do you have the right elements that their legal team requires? Are you enabling the champions to make a case to the people that holds the budget? Is your product easy to buy? So I think there's a lot of companies that have a huge sales market fit, but they don't have a product market fit, and vice versa. I think Canva came at a stage where huge product market fit, not a very easy product to buy. And a lot of the elements that I changed immediately was, how do we find sales market fit? Uh, that can it can be very simple things like creating a buyer pack. It's like, hey, your legal team is probably going to ask these three things of our contract, and just to get ahead of them, we are proactively going to talk about this in our legal conversation, right? Or hey, your security team will have questions about how we handle data. So here is a data pack that your security team needs to know. Uh, if you don't have that, it's just going to extend and extend and extend the sales cycle indefinitely. And the user buyer, they still have that need, and they're going to say, okay, let me go with company X, which has that pretty much solved. And if you guys get your stuff together, then we'll eventually work with you guys. But they're going to go with a solution that's going to solve their problems right away and now.
Right, right. Speed is everything. No, that's a super good one. Sales market fit, getting to sales market fit. Now, when you start recruiting salespeople or sales team to actually get that motion going, like what are the first roles that you look at, and should it also be someone that's internal from the company already that knows the product, knows how the buyers are interacting, and all of that stuff, or can you go and look externally at first?
Yeah, that's it's an interesting question because I mean, talent can come from anywhere, right? Great talent can be internal, can be external. It can be people that you had no idea were great sellers, and you bring them in. Uh, the one thing that is true and has been true throughout my career is that if it's somebody that is used to a similar way of selling, makes things a lot easier, right? Uh, Jason Lemkin has actually a really good article on this, which is if they are used to the ACV, if they are used to the speed of the uh, sales cycle, and they are used to SaaS, then the other stuff is a bonus, right? Because you can teach people about the product, you can teach people about the vertical, you can teach people about the values. But somebody that is used to selling, $15,000 contracts versus $1.5 million contracts, it's a very, 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 very different persona and a very different way of selling.
Right.
You can scale yourself there, right? Or you might get somebody that has only sold $1 million contracts and has no idea how to sell $15,000 contracts, right? So that is I believe it's a wider stretch. And when you're in hyper growth stage, you have to compromise some things, right? And then there's a core skills that you always have to look at, right? People that are perseverant, people that are that thrive well under a changing environment, particularly while you're discovering that sales market fit. Folks that are able to understand that complex sales is not one directional, right? They have to be multi-threaded. They have to help the customer engage their internal teams. There's a few core skills that are very important as well.
Hi guys, I quickly want to let you know that we are doubling down on this podcast, and by so doing, we are looking for the better revenue stories out there. So if you like what you hear, please give it a like or a follow. It is a simple click on a button, but that click would mean the world to us. All right, let's go back. Those are gold ones. That's super good. Thanks for sharing that. What about also the sales playbook itself, but really in terms of what do you say to whom and when? Are there like changes or things that are done differently than if you would go for more traditional sales-led motion or PLG motion?
Yeah, not specifically to PLG motion or sales-led motion, but let me tell you what has changed in the past 15 years. Right? So I think we've been living in this golden age of SaaS and this golden age of B2B sales. This is due to many things. One is the oversaturation of outbound due to the SDR profession becoming a reality, and I believe low interest rates made people take just have a higher appetite for risk and buy products that sometimes they didn't need, and so the cost of acquisition was quite low, while the lifetime value of customers was quite extended. This changes now that there is a complete saturation of. Inboxes are full. People no longer pick up their phone. It's very hard to get in front of people. So whatever playbook you had before coming into 2023. You really have to sit down, throw it out, and start fresh. What that playbook actually looks like today is there is multiple channels available. With some people, you're going to get with one of them, and some people they respond better to phone, to email, to SMS, to conferences. Some people respond to gifts. Like for me personally, you will never get me through an email. I just don't, my inbox is absolutely blown out. So it's not like you're not going to sell to me on email. Maybe on WhatsApp, I will respond. WhatsApp, I'm a little bit more responsive. So when people say, hey, cold calling is dead or cold emailing is dead, it depends, right? It depends on the persona. The second thing, generative AI has made hyper personalization an absolute must. If you are still sending very generic emails and that don't necessarily speak to what the person is going through, you're behind the pack. And let me give you a very tangible example. If you're selling to a public company, one tactic that is a must for everybody who is listening is download every single public document that they have, upload it to a ChatGPT type software, and start having conversations with those documents, and start understanding. I mean, those documents that you would never really have time to read. Now you can summarize them, you can have conversations with them, and you can distill what are the challenges that company is going through. And every single one of your outbound campaigns should have that distillation of challenges that the company is going through that they've made quite public, with a great understanding of that person's LinkedIn profile and what they care about and what they're posting about. If you tie those two together, that's where hyper personalization comes, and you can do that at scale, right? So if you're still sending a very generic, hey, quick question, I don't have time to answer quick questions. C-levels they're not going to have the time to answer these quick questions. So having said all this, the playbook absolutely changes due to the change in the macroeconomic climate and the change in how hyper personalized you can get.
No, that's gold. That's an excellent example of sales in 2023. I think also sales in 2024. It's got to be about the AI assisted sales rep that acts personalized but still has the scale in it. So I like that example. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes.
Yet you didn't really touch on any product signals, and I don't know if that's like because it wasn't really fitting with the example that you were giving. But I'm also wondering if that is something that you have experienced before, because when looking up on the subject of product-led sales, I also read something as the concept of product qualification, right? Where instead of working with MQLs, we now have like product qualified leads, PQLs. And I was wondering if that is a thing at Canva, or maybe it used to be at Miro. Have you heard of it? And what's your experience on it?
Yeah. Because you already know what the user is doing in your platform, PQLs become a little bit more example, and you get a lot of remember sales. A lot of times it's a game of understanding your customer, but reading their intentions in a way that solve some of the challenges that they don't even know they have, right? So they might be doing something in your product which is very representative of, oh, they have this challenge that I have seen 50 other times that I've solved for 50 other customers. And again, they might or they might not know what that challenge is. So as you understand the behavior within the product, one thing that is very true to product-led sales is identify what those moments are, what those flags are, and reach out to them with specific plays that apply to how you solve those challenges. Actually, a call out to a startup that is actually being used across a few of the companies that I help is a product called Pocus. They are the one solution that essentially will give you visibility on what's going on in the product and will automatically detect that one use case, add it to a sales engagement platform, and start messaging, again, very hyper personalized, and say, hey, you've been using this one product for this one use case. This is how another 2 companies in your vertical have used it as well, and this is how we can help you out. Let's chat. Again, you have to give incentives for the customer to want to speak with you, right? If the incentive is just like, hey, I want to find out more about your business, they don't really care. But if the incentive is, I want to tell you about something that you have, that you have demonstrated that you have as a challenge, they're going to be curious and they're going to want to talk.
That's actually interesting because indeed in the preparation I also came up. I also discovered Pocus, and I was wondering, like, is that like a typical? Is there? So I suppose Pocus is like a typical tool that enables the PLS motion, right? Or are there like other tools that you should consider or be aware of to actually make those connections possible, where you have like product usage linked to certain plays that you can roll out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the core thing that you're going to be looking at is your own internal products and how you message, or sorry, how you view the user journey. I think if you understand the user journey, and you might be looking at your own metrics dashboard, Focus is not going to it's not going to add those rules for you. You have to understand your business first, and you have to understand what those use cases are. But what will Focus solve for is basically bridging the gap between an enablement platform. It could be Outreach, it could be Salesloft, it could be many others that are out there, and your metrics. So marrying those two, I think it's important, right? And Focus works exceptionally well with PLG companies because you give them the raw data, you give them the use cases, you tell them what to watch out for, and they'll continuously monitor those things to be able to trigger an enablement event. Again, the marriage of those two metrics, data, important life events of a user, with let me reach out to them, sometimes is missed by sales teams, and Focus bridges that, which it does exceptionally well.
Okay, that's interesting. Good to know. If you also have to link like all those data points to the sales team, whose role is it to actually make that connection somehow? Is it the role of the sales leader, or should you have someone responsible for RevOps? Or how would you typically approach that if you all of a sudden enter a PLG company and you have to move to that PLS motion?
Yeah, the question is not as clear cut just because of the new paradigm, right? I think companies have evolved quite fast, and so sometimes this role doesn't quite sit in doesn't quite sit in sales, it doesn't quite sit in RevOps. Some people have it under marketing. The truth is that it's a mix between somebody that understands data, somebody that can connect that data to use cases, and somebody that understands how to connect three different machines that are not talking to each other. Even the term RevOps is fairly new in the scope of tech, right? Before it was called Sales Ops, and Sales Ops was sometimes just like, hey, the people who maintain the software, right? Then it became RevOps, and it kind of became the people who actually assign the quotas, and it might be they also do a little bit of enablement. But there's going to be, I think the profession is going to evolve to include people who understand the product usage, who understand the product qualified leads, and how to assign a product qualified determiner to those leads, and someone that ties all that technology together. So you can call it sales ops, revenue ops, but I think it's basically going to be an enabler. The mistake sometimes is to have the assumption that sales is going to understand exactly what makes a product qualified lead, or to assume that even the product team is going to understand what makes a product qualified lead becomes a sales worthy lead, right? So there's going to be a marriage of those two professions, really.
Okay, that's interesting. Because maybe similar question for sales enablement. You also kind of mentioned it earlier that the plays you roll out, it's going to be quite different. You need to know, it's not only about the vertical, but you can also personalize it to the customer. So who would need to take this into its own responsibility? How, again, same question as earlier, like how would you typically approach this if you would enter a company that's PLG started? Like all of a sudden we need to roll out those plays, we need to define those plays, like who should be in charge of that?
It's an interesting question. Again, I think the official title, I don't want to call it something specific, but I'd say there has to be someone within the company that does that, right? I always believe the role of enablement can be chopped up into three. One is when a salesperson starts, how quickly can you ramp them up to sell, right? So within enablement, I would almost consider that the onboarding team. Second is how can you make sure that you solve from the first conversation to the final close and reduce that as much as possible. That can be many things, right? So that can be legal team, deal desk functions, just making sure that the team is, as we spoke about earlier, kind of has found sales market fit. And there's a third part, which I think is what related to your question, that enablement should look after, which is how can you increase the close rate, right? Increasing the close rate has many different parts. It can be, are you communicating the message right? Are you having the right plays? Are you finding the right use cases? Are you tying those use cases to value? And is a team enabled and trained to do all that? I think that third persona, even though it's englobed as, hey, the whole sales enablement area, I think every company should have that one person that is just obsessed in bringing a percentage point up when it comes to the company to close rate.
I love that. I love how you made the split in those three different segments because I can only agree with you. Hi guys, just wanted to invite you to block May 16, 2024 in your agenda for the We Are Sales conference. The number one reason why people didn't join last year is simply because they hadn't blocked the date. So I hope that by so doing, you can block it. Hope to see you there on May 16, 2024. All right, let's go back. Now, there's also another observation I made it, and I wanted to ask your opinion about it because there are like enough studies that swear that buyers are more interested in buying experiences with no seller interaction. Yet we now also see the move from PLG to PLS. So we as the selling organizations, we still see a lot of value in having those selling interactions. So, you know, what's your opinion on here? Are we evolving towards a future where we will not need PLS as a motion, or, you know, what's your opinion on that?
I think the discovery part comes a lot later than the past 15 years. Before you would sit with a buyer, you do a little bit of discovery, you would understand, you know, what they're trying to solve for, and then you would take them through the journey. Right now, and that would be at like 10% of the deal closed. I think discovery now happens at probably 80%. I think for below the line buyers, definitely. But as I mentioned, I think if you've ever purchased a company within a Fortune 500, if you've ever purchased a product within a Fortune 500 company, you'll realize it's not that easy, and the sales role becomes a little bit more complex. So I think 80% of the journey is already, you know, it's available online. People are able to to use the product, to associate their use cases, like a lot of stuff that wasn't present back then. But that last 20% in complex sales, it's not that easy because you need to involve different stakeholders. You need to associate those stakeholders to the right incentives, and you need to help people really buy the product. So when people tell me, hey, is sales ever going to get automated? I think that last mile, that last 20%, it's very hard to automate. The other 80%, I think,
in a complex sales context, right?
In a complex sales context, yeah. I think that last mile, that last 20%, it's so difficult that I think it's always going to need a hand holding throughout.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. Okay, good. So I can imagine that leading a product-led sales team is not always as easy. So is there maybe like a typical challenge that you recognize in many different organizations that follow that motion? I mean, maybe just looking at Canva for Enterprise, what is like the biggest challenge that your team is facing, quarter after quarter?
Yeah, I think product product-led growth gives itself to um, you gotta find sellers that are able to really read the puzzle and solve it. Um, and that puzzle sometimes it's again bottom up sales, and this can be many things. It's closing different accounts within different teams, with different countries, with different use cases, coordinating all these teams, uh, and and pulling the trigger at the right time to reach out to a C level. So I think people that are very one directional, people that know how to close teams but don't know how to close companies, or people that know how to close companies but don't know how to close teams, they'll have a very challenging time. Uh, the role of the salesperson changes as well, in that they have to become almost a quarterback on determining the strategy on an account. Uh, so we spoke about hiring earlier, but I think that's one thing that I look for as well. Someone that is able to read beyond the sale, beyond the contract, right? Somebody that is able to look at an organization as a complex puzzle that it's going to take time to close. It's going to take various stakeholders, various teams, various plays, and they have to be versatile and they have to be creative in order to solve for that puzzle.
Yeah, I like the dimension of you need to be comfortable with managing different stakeholders, to be multi-threaded. Because how can you test for that, challenge for that, try to recruit for that specific particular aspect?
Yeah, recruiting is an art of it on its own. To be honest, I think that
True.
would be
It's a separate
that
topic,
would
a
be
separate conversation.
yeah, that would be another 1 hour conversation. But I think throughout I mean, when you're hiring for somebody that really fails that profile, like you want them to guide you on how they've closed a deal in the past. And one thing that I learned actually in Miro did this quite well, is on a Miro whiteboard, they would guide you on how they close the deal from beginning to end. Because a lot of times you'll see how, well, first of all, if they closed it, because sometimes they might present a deal that somebody else closed, and you're wondering why they chose that deal. Um, you want to see how complex the deal was, how they solved for different challenges, and you want to see how they involve different stakeholders from within your own company and different stakeholders from other companies. Uh, because I think the best salespeople as well, they're able to sell as a team, and they're able to get the buyer to buy as a team as well. And they will involve different teams and pull the right resources internally to make sure that those deals are being closed. Uh, in an interview process, I think by them guiding you through a deal, you solve for a lot of those. But there's many other questions you can ask to test for perseverance, to test for how they think about company, how they think about transferring the vision, how they think about storytelling, how they think about various aspects.
Also daring to indeed take the bigger picture into account. Like you said, it's not about direct sales relationship that you can have now, but take it further than that. Let's see that you think long term. I like that. What can you say about the way that you would approach like cross-sell, upsell, expanding accounts when you have that product-led sales motion? I don't know if it is completely different. I know now again you have maybe proprietary data that can act as an advantage or can act also as a recommender system to do those cross-sell, upsell. Is that also something that happens at Canva, or you have seen it somewhere else? What can you say about that?
Yeah, I think that does happen across. But most of the product-led growth companies that I speak to, every once you have that initial land, I think the moment that happens, two things should be triggered. One is, how can you provide the most value in the product, and how can they fall deeply in love with the product to the point where they become your biggest champions? And second is, what are the teams that have the exact same characteristics as a team that you've brought in as a customer can you bring into as clients as well?
To make it very pragmatic, yeah? So to make them fall in love with the product that you have to offer, what can you do then, or what are like different types of touch points or things that you want to make happen, expectations that you want to see in order to make sure that they love the product? I suppose it's more like a customer success in terms of responsibility, but like what are the things that you see that works very well?
Yeah, it can be. It's definitely a customer success journey. There's there's a few things that are very important throughout. One is that they're using the products that you think are stickier within the product, and a lot of time you can solve that with training, and even finding champions or advocates within the company that are going to be the people that involve everybody else. I think ultimately, if your manager, your C-level, like whoever's leading the team, if they believe in the vision of the product and it's something that they communicate, there's this waterfall effect, right? Which they're going to get other people involved, and then just make sure that there are trigger warnings of usage. You want to have as much activation as possible. If there's a usage drop, you want to understand why, and that's where the customer success team are heroes, right? And as opposed to non-product led sales, the customer success role becomes a very deep part of the sales process, because they're in charge of guarding that one account that is going to be used as the example account for other accounts within the business. If you close an initial, small team within the company and they haven't found a lot of value in the product, it's going to be a very hard case for for cross-selling and selling to other departments.
Yeah, that's actually interesting, because I can also imagine that in some cases, the better the customer success rep, the easier it is also to have that expansion of the account later on. And so to a certain extent, you have a lot of influence on really expanding the accounts. And so having those right approaches in place can probably mean a lot to the growth of the company.
It's gotten to the point where the role of the customer success manager is changing to be more sales focused, and even their KPIs are becoming a little bit more sales focused. So while in the past you were just looking at, is the customer happy or at an NPS score, now the shift that I'm seeing is that customer success managers are now responsible for net dollar retention and an increase in that net dollar retention based on upsell and cross sell. Because ultimately they live with the customer, they live and breathe the customer on a daily basis, and they're going to be the ones to know exactly when there's going to be a cross sell or when other teams are interested in that journey. Another aspect, I think, if your product is collaborative, they're going to be also responsible to make sure that they are using that collaborative motion with teams that are not in the product. So essentially giving them that product-led experience before they get to buy the product themselves.
Can I ask, because maybe that's just like a rookie question from my end, but in product-led sales, is it easy to define what is the playground, the play field from the sales reps, and what is the play field from customer success? Because sometimes you have PLG that's based on like a freemium or a free trial, but sometimes it is also about having that first initial user, even though it is paid. Does it then belong to like customer success, or does it still belongs to a sales rep? Only when there's a certain size you can transition it to a customer success rep, or how do you try to make that difference? Because in product-led sales, it always starts with first acquiring users. So I don't know if that's like very, very black and white.
Yeah, it's not black and white anymore. That area is becoming, many shades of gray, and actually, there's a continuous there should be a continuous interaction between account executives and CSM. So a lot of the times when in the past the account executives will close an account and just hand it over, like that shouldn't be the case anymore, where the customer success manager is tied at the hip with the account executive and brings them in when there are commercial conversations where he's he or she doesn't feel that they are quite equipped to handle because of previous commercial conversations. To give you an example, if a customer success manager is in charge of onboarding a team and then activating that team to use the product, going to be triggers in that activation, which might involve other teams, or hey, we're also working with X team and we want to bring them in. The CSM has to be very perceptive of that and bring the account executive at that time and say, okay, hey, this is a different team. Where's the budget coming from? Who's a champion? Who is the executive who's sponsoring this? And you kick off the commercial conversations.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's a nice example. Thanks for bringing it in. Unfortunately, George, we are reaching the end of the interview. So, is there like one last thought that you want to share with the audience when it comes to product-led sales?
As I mentioned earlier, whatever your playbook was coming into 2023, hoping everybody has thrown it out and got it a white blank because there's many things that are changing. Product-led sales, AI, the SDR role, the CSM role. So we are continuously learning. So let's throw out the last 10 years.
Start from a blank sheet.
Yeah.
Now, thank you so much, George, for doing this, for spending the time with me. If there is like a way that you can use this platform as a call to action somehow, maybe you are recruiting, if I'm not mistaken, maybe, you want to send people to Canva, even though you have like already about, above 100 million users. So I think people know Canva already, but maybe you're recruiting, maybe you want to use this platform as another call to action. Is there anything that you want to say?
People will generally follow me on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, I give a lot of call to action when I'm hiring, when we launch new products. So follow me there. It's just Jorge Bestard, and we can chat over there.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much, George. It was a pleasure to have you on, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you, Dylan.
That's it. We've once again reached the end of an episode. I just really appreciate you all spending the time. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. And until next week with a fresh new episode.